This is Plant-Based Briefing. Misinformation to demonize vegan food exposed in new report by Jordi at unchainedtv.com. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based Podcast where I curate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living, get permission, and read them to you here in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And I'm pleased to have permission from Unchained TV to share their amazing content. So now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. Misinformation to demonize vegan food exposed in new report by Jordi at unchainedtv.com. A new report by the Freedom Food Alliance exposes a campaign of misinformation run by the animal agriculture industry, aiming to demonize vegan food. The noticeable rise of veganism in the last few decades has triggered a response, a highly organized misinformation campaign by the animal agriculture industry at stopping the plant-based movement in its tracks. So argues a new 100-plus page report linked here that warns there's a multi-million-dollar effort by industry and their allies to slow down the shift from animal-sourced food to plant-based ones, despite a growing scientific consensus highlighting the environmental and public health imperatives. Using propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation, the industry campaign has achieved significant success in demonizing alternative proteins, particularly veggie burgers and plant-based chicken alternatives, by denigrating vegan meat replacements as processed or ultra-processed, while ignoring the fact that processed meat has been declared to be cancer-causing by the World Health Organization. The Cancer Council notes the World Health Organization has classified processed meats including ham, bacon, salami, and frankfurts as a Group 1 carcinogen known to cause cancer, which means that there's strong evidence that processed meats cause cancer. Eating processed meat increases your risk of bowel and stomach cancer. Red meat, such as beef, lamb, and pork, has been classified as a Group 2A carcinogen, which means it probably causes cancer. Nevertheless, uncritical acceptance by many mainstream reporters and social media influencers of unfairly alarmist warnings about processed plant-based foods has allowed this canard to gain significant traction, negatively impacting the plant-based food sector. The vegan cavalry has arrived. Now, the vegan movement is finally fighting back with the creation of the Freedom Food Alliance. The group's mission is to expose misinformation about veganism and vegan food. Led by renowned digital media expert Robbie Lockie, the new group, based in the UK, just released this detailed report exposing the meat industry's propaganda machine. Unchained TV's Jane Velez-Mitchell interviewed Lockie, and you can watch the entire conversation linked here. Exposing misinformation. Robbie Lockie is a digital media expert and food transparency campaigner with over 20 years of experience in user experience design, web development, and video production. Besides being the founder and CEO of the Freedom Food Alliance, Lockie is also a co-founder and former director of Plant-Based News. Lockie is also a strategic advisor and media ambassador for the Plant-Based Treaty, a landmark international treaty that puts food systems at the heart of combating the climate crisis. Lockie explains what inspired them to create the new group. Over the last decade, I've become increasingly concerned about the volume of misleading information that we see on social media, the mainstream media, and outdoor media through advertising. The industry has become increasingly effective at using digital advertising and mainstream media to peddle a specific narrative, mostly a false narrative about plant-based diets, plant-based meats, the vegan lifestyle, vegan activism, and activists themselves. They're using every trick in the book to try to push back against what is a global movement of people. The Freedom Food Alliance's new report is called Harvesting Denial, Distractions, and Deception, Understanding Animal Agriculture's Disinformation Strategies and Exploring Solutions. Here's how Lockie summarizes it. This report is a deep dive, known as our Foundation Report, which we did with the amazing scientist Nicholas Carter. He is the lead author and environmental scientist on this project, currently working for the Game Changers Institute. His focus with this report was really to expose some of the biggest players in these misinformation and disinformation campaigns to try to help people understand just how insidious they are and the effect that it has throughout society. We have the truth on our side, we have the science and nutritional data on our side, and we really can't give up. Robbie Lockie, the Freedom Food Alliance. The report charges that the animal agriculture industry uses some of the same strategies the tobacco industry used to create confusion surrounding scientific evidence of health risks. The meat industry, it says, funds associations, trade groups, lobbyists, academics, and social media influencers, and, with the U.S. government's complicity, runs huge advertising campaigns. Lockie explains more. Ultimately, the focus really is to try to discredit, derail, distract, and deny. It's really about creating as much confusion as possible, because when people are confused about what to eat and what to buy, they stick with what they know. They stick with the culture that they grew up in. And most people on Earth today grew up in a culture of meat consumption and animal product consumption. So when they consume media and they see these conflicting messages, when they're at the grocery store, what do? They stick with what they know: the milk, the cheese, the meat, the eggs, etc. This is what Lockie says about being honest when talking about plant-based meats. When people say, "Is this vegan burger healthy?" I'll often say, compared to what? Compared to a bean burger or compared to a beef burger? If you're comparing it to a beef burger, it's absolutely healthier. With lower saturated fats and obviously high in fiber, these products have many benefits. If you compare it to a bean burger, no, it's not as healthy. A bean burger has no saturated fat, it's got a lot more fiber, and it's probably better for you. But we want the consumer to be able to have good choices when it comes to plant-based products, and we want plant-based companies to innovate. I don't think we're going to eat our way out of this problem. We don't need more vegan burgers and vegan chicken and stuff like that. What we need is a change in culture. Robbie Lockie, the Freedom Food Alliance. You just listened to Misinformation to Demonize Vegan Food Exposed in New Report by Jordi Casamitjana at unchainedtv.com. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And when I select articles to record, I skim through them, but I don't read them fully. So sometimes I'm caught off guard when I actually do read them as I'm recording. And this was one case when I got to the part about the report was done with the amazing scientist Nicholas Carter. I said out loud, "Oh, wow." And I had to stop and, cut that part out. But Nicholas Carter is amazing. I recommend you follow him on social media. And I might have mentioned this story way back in some previous episodes, but back in the fall of 2020, when my daughter was in grade 9, her Earth and Environmental Science project came up, and she wanted to do it on the impacts of animal agriculture on the environment. I was so excited. And she had to interview someone. And I had recently heard Nicholas Carter on the Rich Roll podcast, and I could tell from some of the words he said that he sounded Canadian, because I'm Canadian as well. I looked him up and found that he was from near the town I grew up in. So I reached out to him on social media and explained that my daughter was doing this project and she needed to interview an expert and ask a few questions. And he replied right away and offered to help her. He was just so amazing. So anyway, I just love him for that. And I will link one other episode in the show notes that you might be interested in listening to. It's episode 684, CEW's Smear Campaign Against Animal Protection Groups, by Dr. Crystal Heath, DVM at ouronor.org. And as always, I put a link to the original post in the show notes, and from there you can link to this report. I downloaded it. It's free to do so. It is unbelievable. It's so well put together. But beware, as you look through it, you're going to get, well, if you're like me, you're going to get pretty angry and wonder, how do these people sleep at night? It's really shocking, the lengths people will go to for the almighty dollar, no matter who is harmed. Oh my goodness. Anyway, please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.